बार में ट्रीट करने आते हैं।
वो तो ये बॉटल से नहीं आता, जब बाहर आए बारों में
मेरे ख्याल से पियो बारों में, पर ये हम तो वैसे ही रखी है।
नहीं ना, क्या नवीन का है?
वो तो नीचे कब से आए?
But I don't know if they have a Thai restaurant. But you will end up
Alright,
here.
go ahead.
Alright.
गैरी आ जाए यार, तेरी भी फोटो हमारे पास रहेगी।
अखबार में निकली सुबह।
चलो।
Yes, it's
आहिस्ता आहिस्ता आहिस्ता।
वो जाके उधर बैठ गया।
मुझे बेचारी ऐसी लगती है, पता नहीं क्यों है।
और नेचुरली शोर में जाओगे ना जोड़ना।
सारे बंदे बाहर निकल जाएंगे।
हाँ
जानते हैं, मैं बरात पूछ
आई नो।
बरात पूछ कनेडल और सावरकर आ
जबरदस्त भी है।
New York they close. Why they just stopped over there?
Because one of the gang members is going to see the Hermes bangles. Yeah, go back out. Hermes यूरोप में लेने का।
क्या दबाना है?
ये इसको
अच्छा पल्लू वाला ये कैमरे से लो फोटो। चलो
आप भी जाओ।
मैं भी ले रहा हूँ।
मैं बंदों को बुलाती हूँ ना, मैं अपनी फोटो भी
गीता ये देख रिकॉर्डिंग पे है, देखा?
No, drink first.
अच्छा तोड़ देना है, तोड़
बैगे $1000 कैश करवा आज
ये सामान ही इन लोगों के लिए
नहीं ना बहुत
सेल्फी है, सेल्फी थोड़ा
शौर्य तो देखो पैसा तो
हाँ जी सर
माल कितने पड़ा
और धनिया चाहिए हाँ गाली कोई नहीं पाजी जितना कहोगे उतना मिलेगा हाँ जी भाई
वैसे में ले आज
सर 6 के
इधर और उधर करके लगे
सब करांगा तो चिंता ना कर कुछ नहीं छटदा मैं is the time is about 10 past 10 in the night
ये बिल्कुल रोम स्क्वायर नहीं है रोम जोड़ा
so better be careful he's a killer बढ़ जाएंगी तुम
अशोक पैसे दे। हमारा फोटोग्राफर की भी ले लो।
पीछे छुपो तो नहीं है उधर पीछे में और उसके
आ जाओ और कौन रह गया
सब आएंगे
आ जाओ
आ जाओ आ जा यार
थोड़ी जा रही है आजा सुनन्ना जो फोटो जाके आई
कैमरा हमारी फोटो नहीं है हाँ यार ये तुम्हारा कैमरा काम
अच्छी आई है
मैं आपके लिए
ये अच्छी है ये भी कितनी अच्छी है नाइस
यार ये दोनों आ रही है बिल्डिंग
चलो
रोक चढ़ जरा
और आगे चलिए
हाँ जी शिवोली गार्डन
व्हाट हैपेंड
देन आई केम विद यू
लोगों कैच करो मूवमेंट ये मूवमेंट कैच करनी चाहिए
ਓਏ ਓਏ ਓਏ, ਇੱਥੇ ਕਰ ਰਹੀ ਯਾਰ ਮੂੰਹ
उतार दो
कोई गाड़ी फ्लैश आ फोटो
ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬਤੀਆਂ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀਆਂ
फोटो तो मैं
खींच तो लो
खींचिए खींचिए फिर आप लोग मतलब इधर से अब वो नहीं हो रही फ्लैश
हेलो आशु
दिखाई फोटो
ਕਮਾਂ ਲੈ ਲੈ
साड़ी रह गई
I took the steps also.
दोनों भाग रही है तो हमने कहा कि नहीं हमने अपने आदमियों का हिस्सा
ओके 11
देखिए वो उधर देख
Non devo fare la foto, metti sopra. E non si sente la musica, Luca bravo, si sente la spiegazione, mettilo. Vieni, buona
जैसी हवा बड़ी है मजा आ गया बाकी है नहीं नहीं
रखी हुई है बच्चा करने उन्होंने बड़ा शौक पै गया
आप जाओ आपके भी पहले आज जाते
अपनी टंगा दूर करो
मेरे माल से
दोनों चलते हैं
चलो भाई बस हो गया बहुत
मतलब है यार
आई नो
बनो
नहीं लो सारे दी लो यार
पता नहीं
ये नहीं
उधर भी है
मैं भी दिखा
आ जाओ जी आ जाओ
अमिता आप सीधे होकर बैठ सकती हो भाई ये सिटिंग द कॉर्नर वो टेबल टेन हो गया
थोड़ा आगे हो जाओ
ये थोड़ा आगे हो रहा
हो जाएगा
गैरी वहाँ से भी ले लो
हो गया मेरी पूरी जैकेट पीछे मैं तो बैठना नहीं था नहीं बैठ
या गैरी
आर्ग्यूलर वगैरह वहाँ पर भी होते हैं हाँ वाटर
चलो उधर चलते हैं
खड़े में ऐसे सेंटर से खड़े हैं
लेट्स गो
नहीं
बाहर बैठ
It's 9:45.
माय गॉड लाइटां उधर रात दिन लाइटां आंदियां नहीं ना कैमरे
वेरी नाइस बहुत ही अच्छा एरिया है बहुत ही
हां अच्छा नजर आता है ना व्यू उधर का व्यू बहुत ज्यादा बढ़िया होता है
It's Norway. The time is 9:15, and we are approaching to Oslo.
चीनी वाला बना लो
मैं तो जो स्टील कट होता है वो बनाती हूँ वैसा बट ये नहीं कभी
ये भी स्वाद है
नहीं ये तो दूध वाला ही
आता है ये बड़ा
वो दूसरा वाला स्टील कट
मैं
क्या बढ़िया
ट्राई
ज़्यादा ठीक है
कोई वाइट बूट नहीं किया
नहीं ठीक है यदि शक्ल ठीक है ना मतलब क्या ना
אין משהו אחר פה, זה הבניין הכי יפה.
छोटे जी दिन छूट नो दिस इज द कैपिटल वी आर गुड विद एवरीवन that's a tourist right we saw the tourism जाए शुरू है
Parliament building.
The parliament should have.
כן, אבל אני עוד לא רואה שהאוטובוס עצר אפילו פעם אחת. אוטובוס אף אחד לא עוצר.
कुछ है बोले हैं है नहीं
बोल रहे हैं आप दो दिन बढ़ाओ रात को इकट्ठे बैठ के दारू पिया करेंगे
पता चलेगा
मैंने किसी स्टोर बंदा नजर नहीं आ रहा है
ग्रैंड होटल
वही नवीन तेरा आ गया TGI
20%
ट्रैम जा रही है पिछू नजर नहीं आ रहा
ऐसे ले लेना जाके
ऑलमोस्ट सेम ही बनी हुई है गलियां हाँ गोल वाली कितनी पुरानी
पहले जाके देखने वाले
is a palace.
नीट एंड क्लीन
नहीं यूरोप है तो खूबसूरत
यार पूरा ही खूबसूरत
स्वेटर पहने हुए
बारिश शुरू हो गई कितना अच्छा लग रहा है
कितना प्यारा सा है
लावे बारिश शुरू होगी उधर तो गिले हो गए अंदर तो
फैमिली कितनी अच्छी लग रही है
आई लव दिस मेरे पर मैं जो स्विट्जरलैंड से आई हूँ सारा स्विट्जरलैंड ऐसे बनाया हुआ है मेरा पूरा मूड था कि डेक के ऊपर मैं ऐसे सारी डेक पे ना ऐसे लगा लूँ पास यार दो बड़ी ब्राइट कलर्स मैं भी यही सोच रही हूँ कि आती बारी अच्छा सब क्यों पड़ा
जैसे कल वो
हाँ जैसे वो सुना रही
इस तरह का मैंने लिखे हुए हैं ऐसे नए वाले सोचा गाने
बस ठीक है प्रैक्टिस करो बड़ा टाइम है प्रैक्टिस करने
और नैपकिन दो नहीं आओ इधर रंग नहीं पड़ते चमक जाना
तो नहीं चमकता मैं
चिट्ठी बैठ
तो मैं जा यार नहीं
इसके पास होते हैं ना वो नैपकिन
नहीं है
नो वन इज अ नैपकिन
नहीं मैं जा आउं लगे
ये सारा बात जान
Dirty girl.
बातें
सुनैना जी जरा इसे देखेंगे
जस्ट
कृपा दृष्टि करो जरा उधर
कृपा दृष्टि
रीना अगे हो ना थोड़ा यार तू तो घबरानी पई
तू फोटो च भी आंदा घबरानी
तेरी से फोटो खींचो
उधर जाओ यार अभी बारिश नहीं
बारिश है डाली
बारिश है आर यू किडिंग
ये दूसरी जगह है ये जगह हम नहीं आए
Una good phone. Area di village tandoori. Village tandoori.
चलो शिपो खड़ा और नहीं वो मरो नहीं
Kita bola. Private property. Sida na form. Honey.
तो मंगा लेना सी कमरे
तो सोचे से सवेरे उठा लेंगे ब्रेकफास्ट के लिए।
वहाँ मैंने भी सोचा है नहीं लेनी, आप क्या करता है? और इन्होंने
वो दवाई लेती हूँ
जब वो सूट जाए
बाबा रामदेव की और बताओ
जो लोग वॉक कर रहे हैं ना, इधर मतलब कुछ आ रहे हैं एक जगह तो दूसरी जगह वॉक करके जा रहे हैं।
बंदूक लेके looks like a president palace.
हम लोग तो यहाँ पे इन जगहों पे रह भी नहीं सकते। मैंने शॉपिंग
लगेगा यार निकल जाते हैं।
तोड़ेगा बापे उन्होंने रोज का कम है।
हाँ that's right. That's it. ये आ गया मेरे शिप सामने वाला ही लग गया। चलो करो।
Okay.
नहीं अदर दिन बैटिंग कर देंगे। अगले दिन तुम देख लो ना पसर के बैठे हो तो कोई बात नहीं, वो सारी
ऐसा रिकॉर्डिंग हो रही है थोड़ी गल्ला हो
सारी
अच्छी अच्छे बोलो शुभ शुभ बोलो शुभ शुभ
सारी ऐसे करते हैं। nobody does anything anymore.
हाँ जी
तो मैं कहती हूँ
और मैंने इतना खान का शौक है, चाहे मैं काट खावा जितना भी खाना है। अगर
वही बनाने हैं जो खाते हैं।
चश्मा लगाया ही नहीं हुआ।
बनाया you know whatever this
देखिए,
is
recording
teachers वही
आ
आते
गई
हैं।
लाल है ना।
आ रही है।
पता की गल है ये अगर चश्मा ना लगाया है ना बड़ी प्राउड हो जाती है।
सब कुछ मिला भी था।
इधर देखो ये कॉफी लाला जी कॉफी।
Everybody cooks whatever they want.
आपकी बीवी कहाँ गई है? गुड आफ्टरनून जी।
हेलो गुड आफ्टरनून।
नहीं बात
बाथरूम क्या था मेरे सामने है, फिर हाथों के आ रहे हैं आए अच्छी है माँ।
भरजाई स्टाइल तो मार एक
क्या स्टाइल
चलो उन्होंने तो बाद में खरा हो जाएगा अंदाज से
लिया उन्होंने
रीना ने लिया है रीना ने शॉपिंग की है।
लिया इधर देखो
ये बहुत क्लोजअप हो।
जूम कर रहे हैं
मैं और उसी में पाएगा।
आगे तो चलो तो बनने जाकर
पुरानी
आजा पक्षी अकेला है
कल
खाली को जो
कल
आज रात बैठ के मूवी देखेंगे।
मूवी नहीं है, मैंने सारा चेक कर लिया। आज मूवी नहीं है, आज वो है।
रिकॉर्डिंग आ रही है
रिकॉर्डिंग चल रही है।
हाँ इसमें मैं अगर पीना ऑरेंज
For you, sir?
ज़्यादा दिन से
Orange.
हो गया इथों लिए उथों लो
दोनों चारों तरफ लेना.
Sir, for you, orange.
Yeah.
Orange juice. Orange or fire. For you.
तो मतलब है वो दी ले लो अशोक दी ले लो अशोक ऐसा देखो
ਹੁਣ ਆਏਗਾ ਉਥੋਂ ਥੋੜਾ ਹੋਰ ਦੂਰ
Direction of the
बस बस वो खड़े हो जा पापा नहीं तो जल्दी जल्दी मूवी आएगी घूमती घूमती
लंदन जाओ अशोक के लंदन
आ जाओ दरवाजा हो गया बंद कर दो इन्हें। नहीं no
A ver, espera, tenemos que ir.
लेडीज की गाड़ी है टाइम नहीं है इधर यार समझ नहीं भाई की कर दिया मैं
जल्दी जल्दी गाड़ो
Yes, sir.
उसकी लो उसकी
इधर देख तो लो
बर्लिन
बर्लिन
बंद कर देना
अशोक तू लाए सर
सारे ने देख ले मैं लाइन जोगा ही रह गया नो नो गो ahead
काली आ रही है काली फोटो है
चलो तो ये शूटिंग कर रहे हो तो हिलो ना तो खड़े हो
हाँ जी
Don't waste time like that. बोलो तो वैसे पकड़ने आए
Enjoy करने no problem. No rush. Don't rush people. Let them have fun. चलो मैं नजदीक आके अच्छे और चारों खड़े हो जाओ
12 बंदे तो बिल्कुल बेकार सी बिल्कुल बेकार सी
ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं हुआ
ਉਹਨੂੰ ਸ਼ੌਕ ਹੈ ਚਿੱਤਰੌਲ ਕਰਵਾਉਣ ਦਾ
चार्ली पॉइंट चार्ली
Lassen wir noch lange nicht.
ये ना वो लगता है जैसे पेरिस का
Jetzt haben wir hier das sogenannte Charlottentor
Ja.
des Erstgegners.
शॉलप गेट
Yes. Das hier.
बोलता तो मैं
अच्छा गेट बनया है
नहीं यू कैन टेक इट बाय घर पे बैठे किसने
मैं तो लगता है बैक साइड है
अच्छा
असली गोल्ड है
थोड़ा चलिए
अब तो फड़ना Now you can stop the red light.
प्रेसिडेंट
Das ist der Präsident von
President House.
German. Bellevue.
Austria में भी सारा डिवर्स है
so pretty
हमारे घर की जो
हमारे घर के
कल्चर सेंटर
Der Reichstag. Das ist das Parlament von Germany.
पार्लियामेंट फॉर जर्मन
Und letztseits ist Kanzler Merkel. Da ist das Haus von Kanzler Merkel.
काउंसलर दा
काउंसलर होम्स
Yes, das ist von Frau Merkel.
एंड द फ्रंट
Ja, das ist bloß von, ja, das ist, ja, ja. So, jetzt müssen wir erstmal parken und mal gucken, ob wir einen Parkplatz finden.
ट्रेन तो जाना है फिर बाद सोचने की गल है
रिसेप्शन करो रिएक्शन की करिए गप्पा मारो कुछ गल्प करो
अशोक के ले जा रहा हूँ कहाँ कह रहे हो
जन्म नहीं रहता ना
Like part of a wall.
अगर तो उधर लगे
Also diese Seite.
This valley.
This is here.
तो दिस गोल
Like the wall and the house of east. Yes?
फोटो ले रहे सीधे हो जाओ
ये है बर्लिंगटन
It's a Berlin Wall, part of a Berlin
कैमरा दो
Thank you.
किधर से लो ना किधर बाल क्या है
तो कुछ कोई सामने करता एकदम मेन वो है
Hier hat der Michael Jackson sein Kind aus dem Fenster gehalten. Damals noch vom Fernsehen. Rechts und anmachen.
Oh, yeah. It's a Brandon.
Ja, da gehen wir daher zu Fuß hin. Da wir fahren erst runter, machen Park.
फोटो ला लो
हाँ इन्हों कहे थे रुके यार Holocaust
अंदर हो ना अंदर हो
खड़े हो देखो
ना पीछे क्यों मोड़ के
सुनाना भी यहाँ पर
कौन ऑफ करता हूँ गाने गा
And like by now we know.
You do from here. Here, no. मौर्य कन्या मीनार वाले बुलाया खाना खाने 12 बजे खाना सर्व हो गया 12 बजे के बाद वो बना रहे थे तंदूर लगाया हुआ मैं उनसे वो कहते थे 2 साल
This is a wall.
Who made this wall? West Germany or
East Germany. East
This
Germany.
is east and this is
I know, but who made it?
Checkpoint Charlie. नहीं
यहाँ से टू लेते हैं
भैया के खड़े हो
फोटो खिंचाए कैमरा दिला
वो भी कम हो गया वो लेकर सब जगह
फोटो खींची थी
नहीं
इनने खींची थी
नहीं मेरी जान. That was a different. वो लेडी जो गोल्ड दी बनी थी.
हाँ गोल्ड वाली
That was a different.
No, Berliner Dom Church.
Church. Oh.
big, very
These sides is the Museumsisland here on this Ganze.
Okay.
beautiful.
Is the
ये देखो इस सामने
Museumsisland.
ये देखो क्या बिल्डिंग है भाई.
What is this?
Is a church.
Church.
Very old church looks to me, right?
काम यही होता है.
जो लोग रह रहे हैं उनसे बहुत बहुत
$1 का कितना है तो नहीं यूरो
लोग रह रहे हैं उनसे बहुत बहुत
$1 euro. It's euro with 136 again.
यूरो
Which $1.36?
ना तो भी तेज है ना तो शहर थोड़े अच्छा लग रहे हैं. हाँ अगर थोड़े बदली का इदा हो ना ये सोना लगे.
बोनस हो जाएगा.
बर्लिन के नाम बोनस होगी.
जो बंदा घूम जाए वो अच्छा चलेगा जो ठीक लगे ये $15 नहीं पाउंड ना यूरो रहते थे यूरो ने
This is a beautiful color. This one na I really like.
तो बात है कि नहीं.
दब गया.
वैसे नहीं ले सकते.
हाँ जी नीना जी.
हेलो जी पे बेकर अब मैं फ्रूट पे बेकर की भी ले लूँ. लगी रे पूरे प्लेट है ये आपका कॉफी आ गया. इसके अंदर नहीं डाल दो ना कोल्ड कॉफी मांगी है ना नहीं पर इन्होंने कोल्ड तो नहीं मांगी इसमें डाल दे वो कोल्ड कॉफी जिन्होंने हेलो या मंगाई
ये तो नहीं मंगाई मैंने.
उन्होंने मैंने बताया आइस कॉफी है.
इसमें तो कैसी दूध शुद्ध पे आके सब कुछ ले आवे.
तो ये है ना दूध पानी हॉट कॉफी पीनी है ना नहीं हॉट
कोल्ड कॉफी अच्छी आई है
कोल्ड कॉफी
है हॉट
मजा नहीं इधर अंदर.
फिर अब क्या आपको आ गई
फोटो ले जा
गड्डी के हाथ से दे देगा इतने तेल.
पूरा यूरोप नजर आ रहा है.
If there's an in-depth. In this episode, Dr. J. Archgetty, professor of history at the University of California, Los Angeles, shares his unique expertise on this truly remarkable destination. One of the most beautiful cities in Northern Europe, St. Petersburg possesses a look and feel unique in all of Russia.
St. Petersburg has a kind of a lightness of color that other Russian cities really don't have. In addition to being a beautiful place on its own, it's steeped in Russian history. It's seen every major phase of Russian history, and it's changed its names over the centuries to reflect these things.
Founded by Peter the Great to be a window on the West, For 200 years, St. Petersburg was the glittering capital of the largest empire on earth. As Petrograd, in 1917, it saw 2 Russian revolutions. As Leningrad, it endured the Soviet period and a disastrous siege in World War II. And today, renamed St. Petersburg, it is a picture of modern Russia, a place of great economic and cultural activity.
St. Petersburg was founded as an act of will by a giant of Russian history, Peter the Great. As soon as he came to the throne, he traveled to Europe, the first Tsar ever to travel to Europe. He went to Holland, he went to England, he went to Germany. Everywhere he wanted to know about crafts, he wanted to know about technology, he wanted to know about shipbuilding.
Although wishing to travel incognito, standing at 6'7", Peter attracted a great deal of attention during his travels abroad. He built an imposing physical presence, as displayed in the founding of St. Petersburg.
Now this was a lousy place for a city, kind of a marshy, swampy building, plagued with malaria, extremely difficult to build on. This didn't stop him one bit. He laid out the city himself, marched around with plans and drawings and maps and rulers, and imperiously ordered where everything was going to be in the city. He conscripted hundreds of thousands of serfs, semi-slaves, to come do the forced labor on this project. Hundreds of thousands of them died, and their bodies were just thrown into the piles as ballast to help bring up the level of the city from its marshy bottoms.
A ruler with nearly unlimited power and wealth, Peter was a hard and ruthless ruler. But he was at the same time a man of simple tastes, who avoided the trappings of wealth in his own quarters.
If you go to his summer palace out at Peterhof, you'll see that amidst all the splendor and the gold and red carpeting, his room was simple wood, and it was filled with maps and tools. In some senses, he was a very ordinary guy, a tough guy, a guy with a purpose.
Several decades after Peter's death, Catherine the Great came to rule Russia. A German princess, she was married to Tsar Peter III, an ruler, who she had assassinated when the opportunity arose. Like Peter the Great, Catherine was a strong-willed ruler and sought to expand the Russian Empire and further westernize St. Petersburg.
She recruited the best architects in Europe, Italians, Frenchmen, and free hand, a kind of a blank slate, to design the architecture of St. Petersburg in what was then the post-modern style.
Much of the St. Petersburg you'll discover today is the result of Catherine's extensive architectural expansion of the city. She built universities and schools and attempted educational reforms.
But at the same time, she didn't do anything slavery that had bound something like 80% of the population literally as slaves to the land. What we see of the city today is largely an effect of her life, her taste, and her need to build St. Petersburg up as the glittering jewel of Europe.
Ironically, the more St. Petersburg became modernized, the more modern ideas would challenge the centralized power of the Tsardom. After Napoleon's disastrous campaign into Russia, Alexander I occupied France, and in Paris, his officers were exposed to new ideas about government.
These returning officers, who became politically conscious, politically affair, they wanted Russia to become democratic. They wanted Russia to become liberal. They wanted to limit the power of the Tsar. And all this exploded with the first revolt in modern times against the Tsar, the so-called Decembrist revolt, December 1825.
While this attempt by a number of officers and regiments was poorly organized and failed, it did engender a radical movement in Russia that would grow and evolve over the next century. And despite the repeal of serfdom in 1861, new forms of radicalism spread through the working class, including communism. Chief among the communist leaders was Vladimir Lenin, a failed lawyer, but an absolutely brilliant theorist and writer.
By the first decade of the 20th century, Lenin had become the dominant personality among the Marxist movement. He lived and breathed revolution, and he had a lot of followers.
As Russia entered World War I, the Germanic-sounding St. Petersburg was changed to the more Russian Petrograd. However, The Russian army was completely unprepared for war and was soundly defeated, leading to widespread protests at home. After a revolt in February of 1917 overthrew Tsar Nicholas II, Lenin returned from exile to orchestrate the Bolshevik-led October Revolution that ousted the provisional government and established the world's first constitutionally socialist nation-state.
In the space of a single year, 300 years of Romanov rule collapsed, and this ushers in the Soviet period.
Moreover, the Soviet era led to the seat of government moving to Moscow as St. Petersburg, now Petrograd, experienced economic decline. However, it was still a strategic site and therefore a military target.
After Lenin's death, our city was renamed Leningrad to commemorate the founder of the communist movement, and by this time the founder of the Soviet regime. And it was as Leningrad that the city endured the siege of Leningrad in World War II.
Advancing Germans in 1941 surrounded the city, and for 900 days, Leningrad withstood what became the leaving an estimated 1.2 million dead from either starvation or shell fire.
The siege of Leningrad left a lot of legacies that are still there today. I have a friend who was a small boy at the time in Leningrad during the siege. He was not lucky enough to be evacuated with a lot of the other children. He stayed there through the hunger, through the privation. He never grew. He's 5'1" and skinny, and he explained to me that his entire cohort of kids who were there during the starvation of the siege have stunted growth.
In some ways, Leningrad never recovered from the war. It remained the second city of Russia, but was eclipsed by Moscow. However, reconstruction after the war was fast and continued through the second half of the 20th century, as this once great city slowly regained its former glory. Eventually, as reforms began to loosen the strictures of the Soviet period, Leningrad was renamed St. Petersburg to coincide with the first presidential elections in 1991.
The Gorbachev period of reform began to take the lid off the Stalinist tea kettle. You could say things, you could publish things, you could do things.
St. Petersburg's artistic and politically active tradition began to resurface. And today, the city is a culturally and economically active city where commerce is on the rise and a youthful population contributes to a vibrant artistic and intellectual environment. The city both continues its trend toward modernism while maintaining the beauty of its rich and storied history, which you'll see as you stroll through streets that look today much like they did over 200 years ago. Built with such singularity of purpose by Peter the Great, and greatly
St. Petersburg देख ले.
nearly unlimited wealth by Catherine the Great, the architecture of St. Petersburg is like no other city in the
I'm
world.
taping it.
Every building is different, but they flow from one to the other in a kind of a procession of style. And one of the great things about it is that it's preserved. In the center of the city, it still looks exactly like it did in Catherine's time. There are no glass and steel skyscrapers, there are no modern banks or anything like that.
The first stone building erected in St. Petersburg was the Peter and Paul Fortress, ordered by Peter the Great in 1703 and completed in 1740. With a cathedral tower topped by a gilded angel-topped spire at its center, this citadel became the collective tomb for every czar from Peter on. The fortress also functioned as a political prison.
सूत्र मसाज का आया हुआ है आज.
We're imprisoned there.
कितने 3 बजे के अपॉइंटमेंट है.
At one time or another, passed themselves through the Peter Paul Fortress, what it was like to be a convict in jail in Tsarist times.
सलून से आया हुआ है.
You can enter a reconstructed prisoner's room and have yourself photographed sitting on a cot as a Russian prisoner.
The largest cathedral in St. Petersburg is the St. Isaac's Cathedral, built to commemorate the Russian victory.
Yeah, अभी दिखाता हूँ.
Begun in 1818, it took 40 years to complete, and its remarkable, massive dome would later influence the construction of the Capitol building in the United States.
The building sits in the middle of a wonderful square surrounded by an ensemble of architecture. St. Isaac's still has shrapnel marks on the outside of the building, on the columns of the church, left there intentionally to remind future generations what it was like to live in a city under bombardment. If you happen to be energetic and not afraid of heights, you can climb the stairway to the very top of the dome, from which you get the absolutely best view of the city in every possible direction.
An atypical structure for the widely classical and European architecture found in St. Petersburg, the iconic Church of the Savior on Spilled River is deeply Russian in design and style. Unlike all the other churches in the city, it was built in the multicolored onion dome style more commonly found in Moscow.
The Church of the Savior of Spilled Blood in the center of the city marks the spot where Alexander II was assassinated by Russian radicals. His son, Alexander III, decided to commemorate the spot by building a cathedral on the precise place on the sidewalk where his father was assassinated.
For this reason, the cathedral juts out into a sidewalk, requiring pedestrians to detour around it to get by. In addition to its historical relevance, another draw are the meticulously made mosaics, which fill thousands of square meters of the cathedral's interior. Coursing through the city center are the canals of Peter the Great, inspired by his travels in Amsterdam and designed with both aesthetic and function in mind. Every canal is spanned by a number of bridges, each unique, each with its own name.
Peter designed highways in the city as transportation routes. If you have the opportunity to take a canal through the city, it's well worth your time. You'll see a side of the city you can't see from the street. Many of the most beautiful buildings in the city were built with their facade on a canal, and not on the street behind it.
Moving out of the city center of St. Petersburg, you'll discover the suburban palaces of the Tsars, including the Peterhof Palace, designed by Peter the Great, and sometimes called the Russian Versailles.
I happen to think it's more impressive than Versailles. Because of the glory of the place, the inside and outside of the Grand Palace are absolutely fantastic. Peter the Great also designed an absolutely fantastic collection of fountains. Some of these fountains are gigantic gold affairs. Some of them are secret fountains that you never even see unless you happen to step on a particular trick cobblestone and get squirted in the face. Peter had a sense of humor as well.
One of the most impressive aspects of these fountains, and a testament to the engineering prowess of Peter, is the fact that they require no pumps. All fountains at the Peterhof are fed by a lake 20 kilometers away, drawing water and filling to the required pressure level that they stream without mechanical effort. The palace itself is, as most Russian palaces are, literally encrusted with gold. But the palace you see today was nearly entirely destroyed in the wake of World War II.
As the Germans retreated, they had the nasty habit of blowing up a lot of the buildings that they had occupied. And they blew up or destroyed nearly all of Peterhof. If you go inside the palace, in fact, one of the rooms shows you the pictures of Peterhof in 1945, and it was a pile of rock. The Soviets, though, aware that this kind of thing could become a tourist attraction, but also because it was a symbol of national greatness, reconstructed it brick by brick, stone by stone, from the original 18th century plans, to the point where today it looks exactly like it did, maybe even better than it did, in Peter's time and in the 18th century.
Another of the glorious suburban palaces outside St. Petersburg is the Catherine Palace, built by Peter the Great for his second wife, Catherine. It was designed by the Italian architect Rastrelli, whose work can be found all over the city. And while not quite as big as Peterhof, it is arguably more lavish inside, including most notably the Amber Room.
In the time of the Tsars, an entire room was completely built of the precious stone amber. The walls were amber, the ceiling was amber, the floor was amber. To walk in there, you felt like you were in the middle of some sparkling golden box. Now the Germans tore it all down, stole it, and took it with them when they retreated. The original amber has never been found. But one of the signs of the rebirth of Russia, in very recent times, is that beginning in the 1980s, a coalition of wealthy Russian businessmen and the Russian government, through donations, rebuilt the Amber Room. So it's now reconstructed for you to see. It will take your breath away when you walk into the Amber Room.
With a lake and forest nearby and surrounded by hundreds of acres of gardens, you'll find the grounds of the Catherine Palace a lovely and relaxing place to visit. And standing before the palace itself, with its great gold dome and exterior flourishes, you'll be looking at over 100 kilograms of pure gold used in the exterior decor alone.
There's no Peter the Great informality here. There are no little wooden rooms with tools and architecture. This is the lavish palace.
While St. Petersburg teems with remarkable architecture throughout the city, much of its great art is contained in the sprawling buildings of the Hermitage Museum Complex, the former Winter Palace of the Tsars. Situated along an embankment of the river Neva, the Hermitage is a complex of 6 buildings in the center of the city, containing over 3 million works of art. With 24 miles of corridors, if you spent 1 minute at each exhibit, it would take 11 years to get through.
The Hermitage Art Museum is by all accounts one of the great museums of the world, if not the great museum of the world. The greatest collections of Italian Renaissance art, of Impressionism and Post-Impressionism. You'll see modernist arts, Monet, Picasso that you've only seen in books. And this is a result of the royal patronage, mostly of Catherine II. She sent embassies into Europe with unlimited funds to buy art. This continues in the 19th century and even into the 20th century.
Celebrated paintings like Leonardo da Vinci's Benoit Madonna, Rembrandt's Danae, Matisse's Dance, and a vast collection of French art, second only to the Louvre, all hang in the Hermitage Museum, in buildings that are themselves works of art. Other more unusual highlights include the famed Peacock Clock, an 18th century mechanical marvel, and the Treasure Gallery, featuring thousands of works of art crafted from gold and precious gems.
In World War II, most of the collection was evacuated because of the German bombardment. It was returned and restored. Fortunately, only 2 German bombs actually hit the Hermitage, so the building itself was not significantly damaged.
While it is impossible to see everything the Hermitage has to offer in a single visit, exploring the museum's collections and the complex of magnificent buildings is a highlight no outing to St. Petersburg should go without.
So phone ka room service ko aaya nahi.
The arts in St. Petersburg is legendary. For centuries, the city has been home to world-renowned poets, novelists, composers, and an institution of ballet that sets the world standard and is a distinct source of Russian pride.
St. Petersburg has always been a center of culture, art, architecture, music, and dance. It's been so much a center that it's a tradition in the city for common, ordinary people to go to the ballet. It's built in to the culture of the city.
St. Petersburg's Mariinsky Ballet, formerly known as the Kirov Ballet during the Soviet era, has been home to some of the world's most well-known ballet stars, including the dancers Rudolf Nureyev and Mikhail Baryshnikov, and the choreographer George Balanchine. And the love of ballet in Russia runs deeper than perhaps anywhere in the world.
People who like the Mariinsky will always say they're better than the Bolshoi, and the people in Moscow will say the Bolshoi is always the best. This kind of competition is something unique to Russia. People root for their ballet the same way a lot of people would root for a soccer team.
The pedigree of classical music composers hailing from St. Petersburg includes figures who radically transformed music. In the 19th century, Peter Ilyich Tchaikovsky forged a style of composition that fused traditional Russian music with European classical conventions and became the first Russian composer to achieve lasting international fame. Igor Stravinsky, widely considered today to be one of the most important and influential composers of the 20th century, fundamentally altered the way future composers conceived of rhythm and structure with a trio of ballets, most notably The Rite of Spring. And while Russian cuisine may not receive the same level of international renown as the arts, it is, nevertheless, one of the most significant and important cuisines of the world.
Beef stroganoff is familiar to everybody. Chicken Kiev is familiar to everybody. Stuffed cabbage rolls, for heaven's sakes, are an important and classy part of the Russian cuisine. You don't want to miss the Russian black bread. The black bread is absolutely fantastic. It has a taste you can't find anywhere else in the world. More than 20 kinds of mushrooms feature and decorate the Russian diet, each with its own name, again reflecting the Russian peasant tradition, a people of the forest.
Many Russians and many visitors are fond of the thin pancake called blini. It can be eaten for breakfast with jam or eaten any time of day with sour cream and Russian caviar.
Unfortunately, black caviar, the famous beluga caviar, is no longer obtainable because the beluga sturgeon has been almost fished out of existence. The substitute, and it's a great substitute, is red salmon caviar, which goes wonderfully on blini with sour cream, and it's not particularly expensive.
Vodka is, of course, a popular drink in Russia, and St. Petersburg, with its abundance of fresh water, is a center of vodka production. And Russians drink this honored national libation according to a particular ritual.
It's served ice cold out of the freezer in shot glasses. You drink it all at once, no sipping allowed, with some kind of snack. The snack is obligatory. Everyone toasts and everyone drinks at the same time. So if you want to drink vodka in the Russian way, that's the way to do it.
So fun.
The grandfather of a friend of mine, a very old man, told me once over dinner, he said, you know, I was born in St. Petersburg. I remember Petrograd. I grew up in Leningrad, and now it's St. Petersburg again. He said, I'm proud of all of it, and now I can die happy. You're going to love this city. You're going to feel pleasantly overwhelmed by the history. You're going to feel impacted by the art. You're going to enjoy the people. These are people who are smiling. These are people who are well-dressed and happy. These are people who are open, living in the middle of what I think is the most beautiful city in the world, steeped in its history. You're going to love it there.
Touring the streets and canals of St. Petersburg and its suburban palaces is an incredible journey through a remarkable side of Russian history. Let's take another look at how you can experience the very best of St. Petersburg. With an art collection to rival the Louvre, the Hermitage Museum is home to over 3 million artworks, including paintings by Da Vinci, Monet, Rembrandt, and Renoir. Known as the Russian Versailles, the ornate Peterhof Palace overlooks the Gulf of Finland. The Grand Cascade Fountain features Samson prying open a lion's jaws as water cascades down terraced steps. The opulent Baroque Catherine Palace features a gold dome crown and is set in 1,400 acres of spectacular gardens and parklands. Visitors enjoy the gilded beauty of the throne room. Built to protect the city from Swedish attack, the Peter and Paul Fortress was used as a prison for political exiles. It also boasts the tombs of many czars, including Peter the Great. The restored Church of the Savior on Spilled Blood boasts a dramatic Russian-style exterior with elaborate onion domes and is built on the site of the March 1st, 1881 assassination of Tsar Alexander II. The central gold dome of St. Isaac's Cathedral is one of the largest in the world and covered with 220 pounds of gold. Peter the Great conceived of the river Neva as the main thoroughfare of the city, constructing the St. Petersburg through and around the river so that it could transport people and merchandise alike. The spectacular State Ballet and Opera Theater of St. Petersburg Conservatory was built in 1896 to house the art school founded in 1864 by the talented pianist and composer Rubinstein. Regardless of where your journey takes you, a visit to St. Petersburg will leave you changed forever. It's been an honor having you join us on this journey through the remarkable history and heritage of St. Petersburg. And while we hope you enjoyed this glimpse into this fascinating city, always remember that there's nothing like actually being there. That's when you become a part of history.
What's in it? Here's why we like it. No duplication, and these tours are intense. The sightseeing is intense because there's so much to see. Day 1, the Hermitage, the Cruiser Aurora, the Peter and Paul Fortress, lunch included, St. Isaac's Cathedral, and the Spilled Blood Church. Then day 2, Peterhof Palace and Fountains, an expansive piece of real estate. The Canal Cruise, lunch, and the Yusupov Palace. So another busy day of walking and exploring and intense sightseeing. Let's look at some of the attractions now. The Peter and Paul Fortress. This is where St. Petersburg began. Built by Peter the Great in 1703 to protect the city against the Swedish army and navy, but the Russians won that war before the fortress was completed. In the middle stands the Peter and Paul Cathedral, burial place of Russian emperors from Peter the Great to Alexander III. Then there's Aurora, docked in the Neva River in the center of town. It remains the oldest commissioned ship of the Russian Navy, built in 1900. She is now under the care of the Central Naval Museum, and the battleship is still manned by an active service crew. From 1956 to the present, 28 million people have visited this historic site, the Aurora. Then there's Peterhof Gardens, known as the Russian Versailles. The ornate palace overlooks the Gulf of Finland. The Grand Cascade Fountains features Samson prying open a lion's jaw as water cascades down terrace steps. 173 fountains in all, fed by underground springs and ancient stone walls. You'll enter a world of cobblestone streets, narrow alleyways, and medieval buildings, and the city is made for exploring on foot. The streets are too narrow for the motor coaches to get in, and 80% of the buildings you'll be seeing are original structures. Tallinn is a city of contrasts, as you'll see. There's an upper town and a lower old town. Both are worth exploring, and to reach them from the ship, it's about a 20 to 30 minute walk into town itself, and then your real walking begins. At the top, you'll find the Alexander Nevsky Cathedral. It was built in typical Russian style back between 1894 and 1900, during the period when the country was partly under the Russian Empire. And the Nevsky Cathedral is Tallinn's largest and grandest of them all. Here's a better look at it. And there's also Tumpia Castle, situated on Tumpia Hill in the upper part of Old Town, dates in the first half of the 13th century, and the castle has undergone much reconstruction and is now fronted by the pink-colored Parliament House, built in 1773. You can take a taxi and walk down once you've gotten to the top, or you can walk from the bottom up to the top. And you'll see the cobblestone streets and some of the local vendors there. Is taken on a very nice day. And the secret Catherine's Passage. Make sure you don't miss this. It's a secret alleyway, if you will. It's hard to even find on a map. And there's all kinds of sidewalk restaurants there, little boutiques, and also tombstones are hanging on the walls. And you'll find street vendors and intimate boutiques. That's all Catherine's Passage. Some Baltic trivia now. Can you identify Miss Estonia? Which one? Is she on the left, the middle, or the right? Well, if you guessed any of them, you're incorrect, because here she is. This is the new 2014 Miss Estonia with Miss Virgin Islands, British Virgin Islands right there, Christina Karjalainen. And a pretty girl she is. They take great pride in these beauty pageants in the Baltic area. It brings them lots of international attention, and that's why they always send their best candidates. We're all familiar, of course, with Miss Sweden and Miss Finland and Miss Denmark, how attractive they are. Here's Miss Estonia. Some tidbits about Tallinn. The arrival time is 8 a.m. It's back on board the ship at 4:30. Estonia is about the size of Switzerland, smallest of the Baltic states. Population here 1.3 million, the least populated of the countries in the Baltic area. Tallinn has about 400,000 people, so it's a large city. Unemployment here 11%, and the language is Estonian, and Russian is widely spoken as well, having been under Russian domination. And it receives around 300 cruise ship arrivals, and why is that? Because it's a great medieval city. How to get to town? 20 to 30 minute walk down that long pier into the old city itself. And this was taken from Upper Old Town, looking back at the ship, so you can see how far things are in this picture. But to get to the main gate leading into town takes about 20 to 30 minutes, depending upon your pacing. Another picture back at the cruise ship on a misty morning, taken from Upper Old Town. There's the Royal Princess, and now here you are coming down the pier. It's about an 80-yard walk to reach the end of the pier where the Princess buses, the shuttle buses are, and the taxis are located. And then you'll buy your shuttle bus tickets on the pier. They're $10 round trip, or €750. So that's the situation on the shuttle going into the Old Town itself. There's also a cruise ship terminal. Where's this located? Well, once you get to the end of our pier, it's an additional 100 yards to the right. The currency is the euro, and they have an exchange facility for you there. There's a hop-on bus as well. Costs 18 euro. Takes you around the outside of the Old Town. Remember, the buses can't get inside. Information and maps. There's a post office, a Wi-Fi hotspot. You'll see a lot of the crew members there using that. Refreshments are located at the terminal, and also tourist information, souvenirs, and shopping. What kind of shopping is at the pier? Well, it's limited, but it's interesting. Some wooden ladles and some souvenir items. There's your travel journals and bookbinders. That's what's available at the pier, along with postcards and so forth. And as you walk into town, you'll see this great big map. It says where to go. And there's an X in the map, and it says, you are here. The trouble is, I never know where here is on these big maps, because it only points out where they are, not where I am. As you continue walking, however, you'll see the big church spire in the distance. That's your focal point. Once you reach here, you'll pass through this big portal entering the old city. There's more than one gate. This is the one you'll pass through walking to town, a different one if you're taking the shuttle bus. You'll enter the portal, the Old Town, and then you'll see a classic medieval city. And the colorful buildings painted in the old colonial style. We love it here in the cobblestone streets. And heading into Old City, taxis are limited. Take the shuttles. They're independently operated. $10 round trip or €750. Sold on the pier, and you'll need cash. These cannot be charged to your onboard accounts. Last shuttle at 4 p.m., so stay in town. Enjoy the day. It's a 10-minute ride to the drop-off point, and the drop-off point is Russian Cultural Center. It's more of an office building than an attraction. And then from there, it's just a 5-minute walk, as they say, right around the corner, and you'll be in the old city itself. And here's the Russian Cultural Center. There it is, the big pillars and spires, and that's where you'll be parked. And then from here, you walk into the Old Town. And here's the gate you'll be walking into. It's called Bureau Gate, the entrance to Old Town. You'll see sidewalk cafes, big flower market on the left-hand side, and you'll pass through the arch. And then, oh, what's that? Oh, it's another arch. Yeah, it's the Golden Arches, or as we call it, the American Embassy in Europe. So you'll pass through the arch to another arch, and then you're in the old city itself. You'll be looking for Town Hall Square. That's the main focal point, the gathering spot for everybody in colonial Tallinn. Town Hall Square. If you're doing any shopping in the old city, fragrant juniper wood carved into bowls is popular. Bookbinders, ceramics, medieval memorabilia, hand-knitted sweaters, gloves and socks, arts and crafts, and antiques are popular. And remember, we're in the peak travel season right now. Everybody's traveling in Europe, and Tallinn's a popular destination, so expect crowds and delays throughout our stay. Many antique stores. For those of you that enjoy antique hunting, this is the port to do it in. You'll see several examples of this in town. Every other block has an antique store. We picked up some souvenirs here the last time. Here's some typical souvenirs. We like these. And you'll find these to be Soviet medals. On the right-hand side is one for bravery. The middle medal is a civil award. The gold one at the top is for the defeat of Germany. And the one on the left commemorates the 50th anniversary of the Soviet Army from 1918 to 1948, typical in your antique stores. The old Hansa restaurant. Oh, look at the style here. It's so medieval and colonial. All the employees are dressed up in these shops to look like the medieval days. And here's how they're serving you at the tables and the sidewalk cafes, the many restaurants throughout the old city. And look at some of the specialty stores, ladies. You'll like this. Wouldn't you love to see a shop like this, a pottery store in your hometown? Here's what it looks like in Tallinn that you can explore. For about €5, pick up one of these wonderful glasses that are hand-blown and made here in Tallinn. And ladies, looking for shoes? Here's the shoe bargain of the day. Just like from the Middle East, €129. My goodness, that's a bit pricey, isn't it? But that's the kind of merchandise you'll find a lot of fun shopping and browsing. Let me show you, here's a unique item for €12. It's a great kitchen gift idea. It's called a grapen. It's a tripod pot with a handle and 3 legs used to cook food in the ashes of the fireplace. Fragments of these tripods are found throughout Estonia as kind of a memorabilia item. And we suggest you sit down, take in the essence of the city, have a drink, try some of the honey beer, which is a local specialty, and enjoy your friends and comrades in medieval times. For those of you looking around and doing some shopping, beware of these kinds of signs. The real discount today, 30% for all amber. That sign last season was up all season long. So look for that. And here's a couple of unique specialty stores. One's a restaurant there, the Balthashar restaurant. It's all garlic items. Even the ice cream is garlic. And on the right-hand side, it's the oldest apothecary or drugstore in the world. I took this picture. I couldn't get in that day. It was closed, so we snapped it through the window. There's the entrance on the left-hand side. But we came back and took a picture inside when it was open. The only giveaway it's modern times is the computer there in the foreground. Otherwise, it looks like an apothecary store. It dates back to 1422. Someone said there's also one in Italy that's equally old, but we haven't seen that one. But take a look at this one, browse through it. There's a number of displays. It's like a museum shop, and it's also very functional. They have a whole shelf of Pepto-Bismol with the expiration date from 1422. It's amazing. It's still valid today. And as the sun sets over Estonia, we move on to our next port. If you're just joining us in your stateroom, you've clicked on the icon for Russia. Here it is. It's a presentation for you. My name's Chris Roberts, and I'm Port Lecturer for Royal Princess. What is it about St. Petersburg that is so fascinating? Maybe it's because all the Cold War remembrances are still with us today, or the fact that this is the cultural center of Russia. And it's intriguing to know that you'll be facing those stern-faced, uniformed immigration officials at the pier for added excitement. What's it like in St. Petersburg in the wintertime? Let's take a look. Wow. I have to apologize. I made a mistake. This is Chicago, ladies and gentlemen. That's Chicago in the wintertime. This would be St. Petersburg with St. Isaac's Cathedral. A frosty morning in January. Enjoy better weather right now as we see St. Isaac's Cathedral. The dome is covered with 220 pounds of gold. It was commissioned by Alexander I in 1818 and took 30 years to complete. St. Petersburg is considered by most to be the most European of all Russian cities. It's Russia's second largest and Europe's fourth largest. It's the largest city on this itinerary, and that's why we spend 2 days there. The population here is nearly 5 million. The city has had 3 names. It was first called St. Peter, the patron of the city. This lasted for 211 years. Then in 1914, when World War I began, the city was Petrograd, the city of Peter. And then after the death of Lenin in 1924, the city was renamed Leningrad. Then in 1991, the original name St. Petersburg was restored one more time. During World War II, this was a horrific period for St. Petersburg, thus the fascination we have for it today. The siege of Leningrad started in September of 1941, ended January 1944, 872 days of terror after it began. The German army failed to capture the city, was one of the longest and most destructive of all sieges in history, certainly the most costly in terms of casualties. It was founded by Emperor Peter the Great in 1703, and for 200 years it served as the capital of the Russian Empire. The city ceased being the capital in 1918 after the Russian Revolution. And the city is built on a network of 42 islands, crisscrossed by 65 rivers and canals. And along with 400 bridges, the city is said to resemble Venice or Amsterdam. Let's take a look at some of the facts about Russia. The rundown is largest country in the world you're going to be visiting, just a fraction of it. 10% of the government income comes from the sale of vodka. And the official name, Russian Federation, came in 1991 when the Soviet Union split into 15 geopolitical parts. 220 cruise ship arrivals, population 4.7 million for St. Petersburg. And for those that are curious, the distance to Moscow is 393 miles or 632 kilometers. The weather forecast calling for 60 sunny days this year. Let's hope we have one. The currency is the ruble. 34 rubles equals $1 US. Always bring some local currency with you on our ship's tours or going ashore. And you saw the old flag. Here's the flag from the past, and then the other flag right here is how it looks today from 1991. A remnant of the past is the hammer and sickle. Here's a trivia question for you. What's the closest distance from Russia to the United States? I wonder where that could be. I think I know. Maybe you do too. 55 miles across the Bering Strait from the Cape of Prince Wales in Alaska to Cape Desnev in Russia. And it's less than 3 miles from Big Diomede Island, part of Russia, and Little Diomede Island, part of Alaska. Closer look at the map as we enlarge it for you. There it is. That small crossing is all that separates Russia and the United States. I asked the Department of Tourism to send me a picture about the immigration process. Here's what they sent me. Pretty exciting, isn't it? That's the immigration checkpoint there. Now, well, let's be careful when we go through. Are your papers in order? Yes. Last time we were there, somebody's papers were not in order, and we'll be picking them up now from Siberia when we come back. So it's nice to know they're on, they had a nice time while they were in Russia. And here's what you'll need to know. Bring your cruise cards, your original passports, no copies are permitted, your tour tickets if you don't have your own visa. Bring your credit cards, cash in dollars and euros. Some of the shopping stops on the ship's tours, the prices are both in dollars, euros, and also in rubles, so they'll accept other currencies. And the meal hours are adjusted for breakfast and dinner so no one goes hungry, because we know you're out late and up early on St. Petersburg Day 1 and Day 2. Here's where we'll be docking. It's the Marine Facade Terminal, called Port of the Year back in 2009. It's the nicest cruise ship facility on the itinerary and maybe on the globe. It looks like an airport here, doesn't it? With shopping, restrooms, facilities inside, taxi dispatch stand. So that's what the terminal looks like. And there's shopping inside the terminal too. Now you can't just go off the ship and go shopping. You can do it after your tours. So once you're back on board the ship, that's it. You can't go back ashore again. That's why you have your tour ticket to get you to your transportation. And then outside, you'll bring your tour ticket. Once you've gone through immigration, all the buses are lined up outside waiting for you there. Here are some additional details. There is no shuttle bus service available. Taxis for those with Russian visas, and the drivers don't speak much English. You can go ashore only with a Princess excursion if you do not have a valid visa. The museums do not have air conditioning, and the buses, they have air conditioning, but it's not the same as the United States. I like the expression our shore excursion manager uses, light breeze, compared to a cold blast. But so far this season, air conditioning hasn't been much of an issue. And the museums themselves, lots of steps, lots of walking, and there are no elevators. And a note for those of you that do have visas, a note about car rentals. And we've done our homework on this, and here's a good place to rent them from. It's Boris and Natasha's Rent a Half Track. And they have a special going on now, a free upgrade. There's Boris and Natasha right there, ready to help you and assist you. It's the free upgrade for this personnel carrier. Let's say you're traveling with a large group. I think this makes a lot of sense. No windows, but it's a nice way to get around town. And it's the 2014 Kamaz Typhoon. It's built in Russia for those that only accept authenticity. We thought we'd show that to you today. Now, back in 1965, they were driving cars like this. The Soviet-built Lada. And you're saying, yeah, that's the old Soviet Union. What's it like today? Here's what they're driving today. That's the new Lada, the 2014 sports version. Wow, what a change since the Iron Curtain is no longer there. And how about this? The four-door sedan with glove compartments. That looks like almost like a Jaguar, and that too is built in the Soviet Union. It's the Volga, the four-door sedan version, not too sporty, more utilitarian. And let's look at some of the attractions now that you've signed up for, that you'll be going ashore to see. The Best of St. Petersburg, the 2-day experience. Still space available on these kinds of tours. Come by and see us at the Shore Excursion Desk. What's in it? Here's why we like it. No duplication. And these tours are intense. The sightseeing is intense because there's so much to see. Day 1, the Hermitage, the Cruiser Aurora, the Peter and Paul Fortress, lunch included, St. Isaac's Cathedral, and the Spilled Blood Church. Then Day 2, Peterhof Palace and Fountains, an expansive piece of real estate. The Canal Cruise, lunch, and the Yusupov Palace. So another busy day of walking and exploring and intense sightseeing. Let's look at some of the attractions now. The Peter and Paul Fortress. This is where St. Petersburg began. Built by Peter the Great in 1703 to protect the city against the Swedish army and navy, but the Russians won that war before the fortress was completed. In the middle stands the Peter and Paul Cathedral, burial place of Russian emperors from Peter the Great to Alexander III. Then there's Aurora, docked in the Neva River in the center of town. It remains the oldest commissioned ship of the Russian Navy, built in 1900. She is now under the care of the Central Naval Museum. and the battleship is still manned by an active service crew. From 1956 to the present, 28 million people have visited this historic site, the Aurora. Then there's Peterhof Gardens, known as the Russian Versailles. The ornate palace overlooks the Gulf of Finland. The Grand Cascade Fountains features Samson prying open a lion's jaw as water cascades down terrace steps. 173 fountains in all, fed by underground springs, and expect crowds and delays. It's the peak travel season, as we've been telling you throughout the voyage. The Hermitage Museum. This massive structure has over 3 million exhibits, including the Golden Treasury Room. It's one of the largest museums in the world. It would take you, well, if you saw each exhibit and spent 1 minute at each one, it would take you over 3 years to complete your visit of the Hermitage Museum. And a warning, water bottles are not permitted inside. Leave them on the tour bus. Someone came back and said you need to include that in your lecture. We didn't, and now we do. Water bottles are not permitted at the Hermitage Museum. The Church of the Spilled Blood. The name is gruesome. It was here that Emperor Alexander II was assassinated in 1881. Inside, there are 7,500 square meters of mosaics, plus a shrine to the departed Tsar. It opened to the public in the 1900s after being closed for 25 years. And we like this one. It's relaxing, not much walking except to park the bus and get you to the boat. River and canal cruise. It's a nice second-day adventure if you're starting to get a little bit tired, and it gives you a different perspective on the city and a chance to admire some of that nice architecture. Some of you are doing this one, which is a totally unique walking tour. It includes the St. Petersburg subway, and the architecture here is unique, as well as the train itself. The train's a little bit dated, but you're traveling on a piece of history here, underground, through the lovely architecture and into the heart of St. Petersburg. Let's step back in time now and attend the evening at Catherine's Palace. Oh, imagine yourself attending an event like this. A concerto band is playing for you. And there's the ballroom, and you could even have a dance yourself if you like, or just listen to the music and admire this tremendous palace. It's Catherine's in the evening, another exciting event. And many of you have signed up for the Swan Lake Ballet. It has to do with one's expectation level. St. Petersburg is world-renowned as one of the major centers for the arts and the ballet in particular, and some of you will be going to Swan Lake. The dancers are from the Russian Ballet School in St. Petersburg. A jacket is recommended for the gentlemen. And this photo taken by our photography staff on board, available in our Scenic Baltic Photo Collection DVD. Thanks for the use of that, ladies and gentlemen, for the photography department. Little bonus feature for you now. Relax and let's reminisce together. Cold War movie memories is what we call this. Part of the Cold War legacy is movies which captured the essence of that era. The dates of the Cold War were from 1947 to 1991, and a number of motion pictures were made during that period, because at that time, everybody had their finger on the button, ready to blow each other up. It was a very tense time in politics from Russia and the United States, and everybody was armed with weapons at that time. Even the animals had guns in the Soviet Union. There they are. And some of the best movies that came out: 7 Days in May back in 1961 with Burt Lancaster as a general that wants to take over the presidency of the United States and overthrow the government. The Hunt for Red October with Sean Connery, a renegade Soviet nuclear submarine commander trying to defect to the United States. One of our favorites, Crimson Tide, featuring Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman. Mesmerizing and gripping. Tension you can chew on. I love Hollywood. And in that motion picture, no, Mr. Hunter, that is a message fragment. We're going to launch our birds. One from 1982, Firefox. Clint Eastwood wrote it, directed it, and starred in it, and produced it, about a renegade pilot out to steal a fighter plane from Russia that could go at Mach 8. There's a picture of the build they had for that movie. It was on display in California at the airport there as kind of a memento and salute to Clint Eastwood's efforts. And maybe the best Cold War movie of all time was From Russia with Love back in 1964, Sean Connery. And if you have the album from that motion picture at that time, and I don't mean the CD, the album, that picture was never seen in the movie. It's only on the album. It's worth a lot of money today. And there's the KGB agent on the right-hand side, Rosa Klebb, out to get the Lecter device, the decoding machine from James Bond. And our favorite, Dr. Strangelove, 1960. Peter Sellers starting this, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. You can't fight in here. This is the war room, and our favorite scene from this Cold War movie is actor Slim Pickens riding down a nuclear bomb as though it were a bucking bronco. There he is going Yahoo and waving his hat as he bombs the Soviet Union. That's called, wow, great Hollywood filmmaking. The real Cold War, however, was much different. There's Nikita Khrushchev in 1953, shortly before he took over power when Stalin died. The big event in 1960 was the U-2 spy craft. During the Eisenhower administration, Russia shoots down a U-2 high-altitude U.S. spy plane. The U.S. government first denies the plane's purpose, but Russia produces the surviving pilot, Francis Gary Powers. The incident is a great source of embarrassment for the U.S., and relations deteriorate with the Soviets. What America learned from that was they don't need a plane that can fly higher, they need one that can fly faster. So they built this, the SR-71 Blackbird, that could go 3 times the speed of sound. Big summit meeting back in 1961. The Vienna summit introduces the leaders of 2 superpowers. They meet to discuss the big issues. Khrushchev wanted to display his superiority over the young Kennedy, and later in 1961, Khrushchev showcased his temper at a United Nations meeting. He puts forth a resolution lambasting colonialism by Western Europe, and the Philippine ambassador challenges him, and then Khrushchev responds in rage, taking off his shoe and pounding it repeatedly on the podium at the United Nations. More trouble. Fearing a U.S. invasion, dictator Fidel Castro conspires with Khrushchev. They secretly plant missiles in Cuba capable of striking the United States. President Kennedy orders a naval blockade of supplies and weapons being shipped to Cuba from Russia. Fortunately, those days are in the past. Here's an interesting picture from 2007 with Vladimir Putin and George W. Bush at the White House exchanging roses. Isn't that nice? Here they are on a promotional tour with George W. Bush driving a Russian-made automobile and Vladimir Putin there waving to the crowds. Better times in the past. And here they all are last year at the big G8 summit, all the world leaders walking together. What a great picture that is. We want to talk a little bit about the shopping in St. Petersburg, described by Vogue magazine as very, very good. And shopping on the tours, dollar is king. Ask for a discount if you're paying by cash. And our advice is avoid the street vendors here. Remember, there are pickpockets in St. Petersburg, especially with these big crowds around today. And what could you buy and bring back? Well, how about some vodka? And we're not talking Smirnoffs here. We're talking 10% of the country's income comes from vodka brands we've never even heard of, like this one. And there's even a vodka museum in town and bar. If I had my own visa, I'd go here and have a drink. Wow, look at all the vodka, and look at how pretty the sales associate is. And here's a picture of Joseph Stalin having some vodka with his colleagues, his comrades. Vodka, a tradition in Russia. Also his caviar, but I thought it would be really cheap. It's not. A small canister here, about 4 ounces, was $250. Great buys on porcelain and all types, made in Russia today. And the big souvenir item are the Matryoshka dolls. This may be the most famous of all. Matryoshkas, a symbol of motherhood and fertility. They're also called nesting dolls or stacking dolls, a doll within another doll. And they're a great gift for children because it helps to teach them motor skills as they stack one inside the other. Take a look at them on board the ship. See Isaac in our boutiques. He'll tell you all about the Matryoshka dolls and what makes them different. The one on the left, or rather on the right, costs $26, and the one on the left costs $225. It's because of the quality. Look for quality when you're shopping for Matryoshkas. And our tour shopping stops feature all types of Matryoshkas. Here's the Russian leaders. And for the American football fans, we're not talking soccer now. We're talking real football. There's the Matryoshkas for the Americans traveling with us. And we like this little stocking stuffer Matryoshka. You open up the top, there's a small bottle of vodka inside. So there's all types and varieties on the shopping stops. And what we like is they label things for you so you don't have to ask the price. And the prices are all in rubles, also in dollars and in euros at the ship's shopping stops. And you can even pick up a $1 item or a €1 item. It's the proverbial refrigerator magnet, direct from Russia, and St. Petersburg. Now, many of you may be visiting the Amber Room at Catherine's Palace, but you'll also have a chance to buy amber both on board and ashore. What a selection. I've never seen so much, and it's not just the milky honey colored, but there's all kinds, earrings, pendants, bracelets. Amber, another big buy, because petrified rosin from 40 million years ago from conifer trees is made famous by Jurassic Park, and it's also coming from Baltic regions. And here's the lacquer boxes. They were first produced in the 18th century and have since become popular with collectors. Take a look at the ones on board. You'll find similar ashore. They all tell a story, like the cover on this lacquer box. One horse looking toward the west, one horse looking toward the east, and the other looking down the middle of the road. If you enjoy the metaphor, all the lacquer boxes tell a story with their picture on the cover. And the Fabergé eggs, of course. This is a 168-year-old item now, celebrating its anniversary. And you'll find them ashore, and you'll find them on board the ship. So price compare. Don't have to buy the first one you see, but take a look around. You have 2 days in Russia and time to look on board the ship. And if you don't want to worry about currency, just sign them to your onboard account and see our experts on board. Here's one I found ashore. It's a small pendant. I put it next to a pearl to show you the size of this. What a great gift for a granddaughter. You open up the pendant, there's a small crystal inside with 3 different colored stones. Get a closer look at that. Imagine the look on her face when you would give her something like that and show her how it works when you open it up if you have a granddaughter. The Father Frost figures, similar to Santa Claus in Russia, but they deliver their presents on New Year's Eve, not Christmas Eve. And real Soviet merchandise. How about that watch there on the left-hand side with a red star and a KGB watch on the right-hand side? Great souvenirs from the shopping stops on the ship's tour. One more item, you should see Eric in our gift shop boutiques about the Mark Henry Alexandrite, first mined in Russia. Now it's coming from places like Brazil, but it's a unique stone that changes color naturally. In the daylight, it has a deep mossy green. In the evening, a Cabernet red hue, named after Alexander II. That's the namesake. Alexandrite, the royal Russian gemstone, available here on board. Be sure and see Eric. He's the expert that knows all about it. News from Siberia now. We all have an impression of what we think Siberia is, snow and tundra, but there's a lot going on there that we don't know about. For example, the newest Marriott hotel just opened in Siberia. Here's a picture of it. They have 2 hotels now in Siberia and a total of 15 properties throughout Russia. The international company based in Washington, D.C. Here they are expanding once again into Siberia, of all places. And we warned you about pickpockets. They can show up in any form. You never know what to expect. As the sun sets on our second day in Russia, still to come. Watch TV for Helsinki highlights. All the information you need about the shuttles and the attractions downtown at the Esplanade. As a travel writer, I just wrote a story about Helsinki. If you'd like to have a copy of it, let me know, and I'll send you the link by email. And an update on what's happening with Santa. He has 2 homes in Lapland in northern Finland. Sounds great. Then join us live for our presentation on Nynäshamn, Sweden. Stockholm highlights featured. Remember, Stockholm is 45 miles away from our tendering port of Nynäshamn, which is a nice resort area. We'll talk about the pleasures there and the attractions in Stockholm, including the new ABBA Museum. And Russia will be replayed in your stateroom just by clicking the icon. So audience, thank you very much for joining us here at the Princess Theater. My name is Chris Roberts, your port lecturer. Have an excellent time ashore, and thank you for spending your vacation time with me. Well, a warm Baltic hello to all of you watching right there in the comfort of your stateroom. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for clicking on the correct icon there. It's our presentation for you on sleep.